So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
When I think about the late, great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., there is so much that comes to mind. If Dr. King was standing in front of me today, my initial reaction would be to simply say, thank you. Among the many sermons delivered and speeches given, I remain humbled and reminded of the enormous sacrifice Dr. King gave to America. What can be described as Dr. King's own self-written eulogy? He asked that we not reflect upon his awards or education. Instead, it was about his selfless acts of service rendered on my behalf and that of so many others. Dr. King was a faithful and humble servant, a catalyst for change, positive change, a catalyst for equal justice. I am convinced that I would not be where I am today if not for the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and so many others. So on this day, in celebration of what would have been Dr. King's 92nd birthday, I say, thank you. Thank you for the love and service rendered in the spirit of humanity. Thank you for your sacrifice given to improving our nation. Thank you for sharing your dream.
In reflecting today on the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., the first things that come to mind are profound courage and love. I think of him as a great teacher who taught me my first lessons as a young child about race, inequality, and injustices. And what I learned from him, which I continue to learn to this day, is to keep moving forward and hold on to hope and faith even when times are tough. His words and his work continue to be inspiring to me to this day, and I look to him as an exemplary example of leadership. When thinking about his leadership, I think of him saying, "An individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his own individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. And whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality."
What comes to mind when I think about Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy is servanthood and sacrifice. Dr. King dedicated his life to serving others. He was passionate about social justice, and he diligently worked to ensure that all people were seen as equal through nonviolent protests. Some of the work he did during the times of heightened racial tension of the civil rights era is astounding to me because he was faced with so many tumultuous things that could have made him call it quits, but he didn't. He helped turn the bus boycott in Montgomery into a national campaign where they fought against desegregation. He was integral in helping to establish the Voting Rights Act. He was truly an agent for change and one of the major leaders of the civil rights era. As a result of how diligent he served others during this time, his family was threatened. An explosive device was thrown at his home, and that leveled part of his home. People were truly angry at him. He was repeatedly arrested. However, despite all of that, he pushed through. He was resilient and fought day in and day out for the work that he believed in, which was social justice and equal rights for all, regardless of race, ethnicity, and gender. He was truly a change agent during the civil rights era and one of the many people I thank for the opportunities I've been afforded today. One of his quotes that I live by is life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing to serve others?
Falls your lot to be a street sweeper. Sweep streets like Michelangelo painted pictures. Sweep streets like Beethoven composed music. Sweep streets like Leontine Price sings before the Metropolitan Opera. And sweep streets like Shakespeare wrote poetry. Sweep streets so well that all the host of heaven and earth will have to pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper who swept his job well. If you can't be a pine on the top of the hill, be a scrub in the valley. But be the best little scrub on the side of the rill. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be the sun, be a star. For it isn't by size that you win or you fail. Be the best of whatever you are.